we just don't know. We don't know anything at any given time, at any given moment of any day. So it's silly to pretend like you do or to go around life like I have decided that it has to be this way or it's bad, right? Instead, just say, okay, this thing that I wanted to happen today is no longer an option. What is an option?
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Schulweiss.
And I'm Jen Giamo.
And welcome to another episode of Everybody Talks, the podcast where we explore the wide world of wellness. Sometimes we talk to experts, sometimes we talk to each other, but we're always talking to you.
Every week we discuss topics from nutrition and exercise to mindfulness and self-care. And today we are talking all about change.
Change. Let's get started.
She's the author of Rethink Love, Fear's Not an Option, and the children's book, The Gift of Being Different, as well as the co-host of the popular podcast, Spiritually Hungry. She serves as the co-director for Kabbalah Center International and has been called the Marie Kondo of the soul. I love that. Showing us how tidying up our inner mess can help us find the joy we've been seeking.
While informed by her many years of Kabbalistic study, she also draws on her own personal life experiences. She battled and overcame a debilitating eating disorder, at a young age. And as a mother of 4 children, one of whom has special needs, she has become an outspoken advocate not only for her own child, but others struggling to find their voice.
As a self-professed change junkie, she shares her wisdom with a wide range of men and women at different stages in their lives and inspires them to get excited about a lifestyle of change. Lori Schulweiss, please welcome Monica Berg.
Welcome, Monica. Welcome to Everybody Talks. Thanks for being here. Well, before we get started, why don't you I know we just said a lot about you, but why don't you tell us a little more about yourself, how you became this kind of change junkie, change guru, a little bit more about yourself for everybody listening.
So like everybody else, I didn't come into the world loving change. It's something that we really actually run from, mostly, I think, because our experiences of change usually are things that are forced upon us or thrust upon us, or they're unexpected, and they're usually not something we want, right? I got to a point in my life where I realized that change was going to be along for the ride. And so I would rather choose the change than rather be an effect of something, right? Because you can either change and grow forward, or you can change and go backwards. You really there's no stagnation zone. You're not going to stay the same. So when I came to that understanding, I was like, okay, what would make most sense for me? What would make me happiest? So I started studying Kabbalah when I was 17 years old. And it really changed the trajectory of my life. It informed all of my decisions. It helped me understand the process is the purpose of all things. And it helped me really embrace life in a different way. And so with that, I think that I've always looked to see the meaning in things, especially the most difficult and challenging times. And that does require change, right? So that was one level. But then I took it to a new level, and that's really when I became a change junkie. I realized that I was happiest when I wasn't trying to hold on to things that I had accumulated, things that I had created, things that I had built, things that were in my comfort zone. I realized that the more that I can embrace the messy part of life, still have goals. I'm a Virgo, so I'm organized, and I love a planner, and I love a pencil and eraser, and that works for me. But I realized that having to hold myself to that kind of standard of like, it has to be this way because I decided on a certain day that it's going to be a particular way, or by a certain age I was going to do X, Y, and Z. When I started to really lean into the unknown, which is really our greatest fear in life, and started to embrace that and really be flexible about, okay, I have this goal, this could happen, or it couldn't. And if it doesn't, what are my options? And in that, I became happier and really felt and understood what true freedom is.
Wow.
Yeah. See? Embrace it.
I know, embrace it. I said right before we got on here that I am very change averse. Like, I like things to stay the same.
But I think too,
I like things on an even keel.
That reminds me of a friend that I work out with. She's like, I'm a same junkie.
I am a same. That is me. That is me. I'm going to start using that.
That's
because
funny.
Jen and I are opposites in that way. She does like change, I think.
I do.
I like to change. You like to change a lot of things.
I like to change things. I don't. But to your point, Monica,
Yeah.
like I think that you're right. Like we think about change as this thing that happens to us. It's
Yeah.
like I got divorced and that was a big change in my life and that happened to me and it was negative. And a lot of these, someone dies and that's a big change and it's negative. So it's like there's this negative connotation, I think, associated with it naturally. And then there's the fear, right? There's the fear of
what if this new thing is worse than what
It's
I have
worse.
right now?
Exactly right.
I know.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
So how can people kind of recognize that fear it's a natural part of this process, right? And having that not halt their I don't know, for lack of embrace of change, like them embracing change. How do you teach that?
Well, it's a great question. And I think it starts with everybody being honest with themselves about what their beliefs are, right? And I think often we don't take enough time to kind of pause and say, what do I believe? Why do I believe this? How did this belief become formed? Where did it originate from? Is it even my thought, right? So first you have to look at your life and be honest with yourself about the state of it. It's not so much about, am I living the life that other people wanted me to? Does it look good to other people? I think this whole thing of like external versus internal. I think a lot of people are living in the external, right? What do they, them think? How do I appear versus internal? What makes me happy? What makes me feel fulfilled? What brings me a sense of calm? What brings me a sense of purpose? So I think the first is to see where you are there. And I always say to people, I think being honest with self is the hardest thing. And it's a thing that most people are not, right? I've made it my life's purpose to really give myself emotional feedback to the point where it's almost hourly, right? It used to be, once a year, then it used to be monthly, then it was weekly. And now it's literally day to day. Am I living the day that I think I should be living? So here the word I chose, right? That I should be living, not that I want to live or that, but to my highest soul potential, like why I came into this world, because I'm in it to win it in that regard. So first, again, you have to see what you believe. I know what I believe and I understand the importance of transformation. So a big principle in Kabbalah is that we are meant to leave this world differently than how we came into it, which means a big transformation is going to occur. And it's not that we're bad people. It's just that each person comes into the world with something called a tikkun, which is to correct an aspect of themselves that in a previous incarnation or whatever in this lifetime that it would behoove them to change that. They would actually be happier. So sometimes we have relationships with people and they're not meant to last, even friendships, but they're meant to teach us something about ourselves or give us an opportunity to evolve and to change. So that's my belief, according to this wisdom. And so by that understanding, then of course it would make sense to me that the things that I'm holding on to the strongest are probably things that my ego really wants me to hold on to, right? You should care what people think about you. Oh, did you hear what that person wrote about you or they said about you on social media? It really matters, right? That's all ego, that's all external. For me, I want to say, I woke up this morning, this is my intention. I lost my temper here in the day. That wasn't my best version. I'm going to restart the day now. I'm not going to write it off and wait till tomorrow, right? It's like that continual process. So in that requires change. That requires an openness to why is this thing happening? And again, that's why it's really freeing because you're not bound by anything, really.
Yeah. It's really it's changing your mindset and changing how you that's so when you say that you kind of ask yourself these questions on like a regular basis, hourly, daily, whatever it is, is there a process that you go through? Is it like, do you write things down or is this just something that comes naturally to you now in your thoughts in your head?
Yeah, now it's more automatic, but I definitely, when I started this, I would write about it. I would write, I would journal a lot. That's what really helped me find my voice and being able to express it and to identify which belief systems were working for me, which were not, and really start from there. Now it's something that because I'm honest with myself, if I didn't have that friendship with myself, then I wouldn't be able to do that. So, but if you're starting out, yeah. And there might be things that you don't like, right? Let's say that you write down your feelings about your day and you're like, wow, I can't believe this is my life, right? Like, this is not how I wanted to spend it. That's okay. Don't judge yourself and don't feel like you actually have to run and change something. Just sit with it, sit with it, even if it's 6 weeks or 6 months. I think often people are not honest with themselves because they don't feel like they have the strength to change it or they don't know how to change it. So they become paralyzed. I'm just saying, let's just start with honesty. And that's it. That's a huge accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. that's it. That's in and of itself a change,
That
just
is,
a
I
change
know,
in your
to
way of
really
thinking.
realize. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. So, Kabbalah is not a religion. I think it enhances any religion, right? It's more of a consciousness, of a mindset, and it's such an ancient wisdom. For me, it wasn't like I found it; it kind of found me. It was something that I knew and I rediscovered again. And I think that I found it at such a young age because I remember when I was a child, I had a lot of questions that really none of the adults around me could ask. And I was also really confused because if all of these adults were telling me to pursue these things that should make me happy, yet they were not happy, they were miserable. Well, why would I follow that? Right. So I had questions. There were no answers. And they were real questions like, why are we here? This cannot be what life is about. Everybody seems like they're suffering. You're happy because you have money, you lose money, you're sad. It just all that noise. And so we moved from New Orleans, which I had a very happy childhood, to Beverly Hills, which I literally don't remember anything for those first 4 years. It was really traumatic on many levels for many reasons. And then I remember around 16, 17, I would look at my childhood pictures and I would cry. I was like, where is that person? Like I felt so far from myself, right? And I wasn't spiritual then. I didn't even think about any of the concepts that I now live and practice. But I recognized that there was a real disconnect. And I wanted to find that aspect of soul again, because as a child, I really felt very spiritual. In fact, science today talks about how spirituality is something that all children have. And that if it's not taught in the house, they end up losing it, right? Because it's something that's not reinforced, but we all come into the world that way. There's a great book. It's called, is it The Conscious Child? Anyway, it will come to me, but there's a lot of science around this now. So when I stumbled upon this wisdom, because my family had been studying it, finally every question that I had was now answered. And then I had more questions, and then there were answers to that. So it's a practical, deep, ancient wisdom, but very applicable, very practical. And I think that now more than ever in today's world, people are thinking about spirituality and they're more open to it because we're not happy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, totally. It's like you're kind of questioning the universe, and looking around the world, and you're just like, why? There's a lot of whys.
A lot of whys. I
Yeah.
think that, spirituality can definitely influence your approach to change, right? If what you believe, like you've been saying for the last few minutes, it's like, what do you believe? What is your purpose? What is your why? What drives you,
And here's the thing: a lot of people. Well, yeah, I'm going to get to that second point, but you just remind me of Viktor Frankl in his book *Man's Search for Meaning*. He talks about if you have a why, you can endure any how, right? And that's really what I'm talking about here. Like I remember a few years ago, I was on Maria Menounos' podcast, and
Yeah.
we were talking about this idea of change, and we were saying that there's before and there's after. Always, right? And it's usually in those difficult times. That's really what changes us because we're forced to change. If not, again, let's face it, most people will not choose to change. But she was talking about how she had just finished working for E and she was really excited about what she was going on to do next. And she has a picture of herself on her last day there. And she remembers the suit she was wearing and the color that it was and how happy she looks in this photograph. The next day, she found out her mother had stage 3 cancer. Her mother died shortly after that. Then Maria ended up getting cancer shortly after that. So much loss. But she remembers the day after, right, that photograph was taken and she found out her mother, she said, I was changed. I was not that person in the photograph anymore. And then, of course, much more change followed that. And I have the same experience. One of my children, my second child, Josh, was born with Down syndrome. And I always say there's before Josh and there's after Josh because it fundamentally changed me as a person and changed my whole reality. The thing is, I absolutely chose the change because at first I was full of anxiety, panicked. How can I raise this child? This is not what I want. This is not what I thought my life would be. And then I realized that we never know anything. I just happened to find out about Josh's, you can call them, they would say a disability or shortcomings. I would just say his challenges perhaps, or his, I would say now gifts. But I found out about it on the day he was born where most people find out about like the truth about their children like 30 years later or 20 years later, like, who's this kid, right? And I realized I had a lifetime to discover who he would become and who I would become by being his mother. That's the kind of change I'm talking about. It's things will happen, and the only thing you can control is how you feel about it. That requires, again, a challenge in your perception of things.
Yeah, it's a deep dive. Like that is a profound change. It changes your life as you knew it prior to, right? And it's like I that is such a when you said like there's the before and after. I there's so many instances I can point to. I think in everybody's lives,
everyone's life, of course.
The pandemic. Oh, that was before the pandemic.
Right.
Oh, that was after 9/11. That was these big monumental things that happen in society that we even like my divorce. I always look at things like a memory will come up and it'll say whatever the year is, and I'm like, oh, I was that. I'm not that. I'm not that person anymore. Like that's a much different version of me.
And there's different levels of that throughout your life. You have different gauges of that just personally,
And there will be, and it's not a punishment, and we're not meant to suffer. It's there to teach us something really beautiful and profound. So you can see somebody who the same exact thing happens to two different people. One has post-traumatic stress, another one has post-traumatic growth, right? And they are the same thing happened, same situation, but it was just their outlook that changed the experience. So the day that Josh was born, I was changed. I could have let my heart close. I could have been bitter. I could have gotten stuck. I could have decided not to have any more children. I had 2 more after him, went through all of that fear of unknown, right? Because I decided who I wanted to be. And I decided what kind of life I wanted to have, right? And I decided to find the beautiful gift in what had happened, even though most people wouldn't see it that way. And that is our opportunity. And that's why I'm so excited about this topic, because everybody's going to have things in life happen to them that they may not have wished for. We're going to have great blessings too and great joy, but you can hold that state of joy every single day if you have this kind of mindset.
In my own life, my mother passed away when I was 16, and my father and there's 3 children. I have a brother and sister from that, and then I have he remarried, and I have 2 more. I have another brother and another sister. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, and I always think like, well, what would my life have been like if my mom had lived? But then how would I trade my brother and sister for the life for her? Like, what am I trading here? Like, it's like you're giving up 1 for 2, or you wouldn't have this for this, and I wouldn't know this person, and so you just have to sit back and relax and just say like, hey, this happened and you had this, and now you have these other 2 wonderful people, 3 wonderful people. I mean, I loved, who he married. And it's just an interesting thing. That's so to think about, because what's the trade-off? Yes, I would have been this, but I'm this because I have these other people in my life now. Right. And it's just an interesting change.
So you've hit upon a beautiful idea, and so what happens when we change in that way, right? When we choose to see the good, all of these other amazing internal feelings, right? Because external, we said, was ego. Internal feelings like appreciation, gratitude, empathy, kindness, compassion, those things start to grow and they become heightened. And so I'm sure it changed you, because you look, just from hearing what you said about your other siblings and about your stepmother, that you appreciate all of these beautiful gifts in your life and that you're seeing it that way. But if you didn't see it that way, right, you could be bitter about, oh, where's the life that I was supposed to have?
Right.
And I think that we have to look at life and stop saying, what is life supposed to give me? And rather ask, what am I supposed to give life? Right. It's just a completely different way of living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also do think like you get to a certain age and you're like looking ahead to like a shorter, the road is a little shorter than it was, 20 years ago. And it makes you think when things happen, the amount that your reaction to things changes because you're mellowed out. I mean, Jen always says that I am very even. As much as I don't like change, I'm very even keeled a little bit about it. Kind of accept, what's going on. And I just look at things differently in a different way, I think, now than I did like 20 years ago, in a much calmer way. Maybe.
I think also, like, for you, that first really big change was so traumatic
Mm-hmm.
that it's normal for you to feel like, yeah, I don't want that ever again. I don't
Yeah.
ever want to. And I can relate to that because I think when I had Josh and then I got pregnant 3 months later with my third child, because I was
Wow.
like, if I don't do this,
Mm.
no, because I thought if I don't do this, I'm going to be so scared. I probably won't have any more kids. Right. So I
Yeah.
dove
Yeah.
in. I made that conscious choice, but it was
Wow.
terrifying. And I remember I kept thinking that I don't ever want to feel the way I did again. It's not so much what had happened. It was how I felt the day he was born, that diagnosis, the doctor coming in. I never wanted to be taken off guard like that ever again. So it was more about that feeling. That's the trauma, right? That like shock. And I started shaking and like uncontrollably. I was in shock, utter shock. I could not, understand what was happening. I was also on morphine, I think, still because of the C-section. But I think probably your aversion to change is more about that, and maybe if you look at
Definitely.
that, then you can start to embrace this a bit more. But I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. I think it depends on, I mean, look, everyone's going to have something that's traumatic, people will
Yeah,
die
everyone
and,
has that.
but I
Yeah.
think it's what you come away from it with. And I think that sometimes it's difficult, at least for me. And like you said before, you could either grow from it or you can have, PTSD. And I think that there's also like an in between of that. Like I feel like I went through like a definite post-traumatic stress response immediately after my husband left me. And it took me a long time, but I was able to find, and I did, I sought out shamanism and all these different spiritual teachings to kind of help me to, I didn't know, I had no hope anymore. I didn't know. And back to like your point about like, this is not what my life was supposed to be. Like why did this happen to me? And I think it took me a little while, but I went through that trauma period longer than I'd like to admit, but I went through it. But started to understand like who I am now is so different than who I was then. And it's better. It's like a much better version of myself. And all of these things that you look back on and you think like, well, if that never happened to me at the time, it was the worst thing that ever happened in my life. And then looking back, it's like, well, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be this person. I wouldn't be doing these things that I'm doing now and have these relationships and these friendships. And, my whole life turned upside down. But at the time I thought was bad, but turned out to be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Like we wouldn't be sitting here.
You and
if
I would not be friends.
No, we would not be friends.
Nope.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were shocked. You weren't expecting that.
No.
No.
It was a very, very unexpected, shocking time. Yeah. So I think I went through like the shock phase for quite a long time and couldn't really process it. And, and it didn't help that everyone in my life, everyone around me was also just as shocked. They were like, what do you mean where did he go? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. He's gone. But so, there wasn't, and eventually, of course, my support system was strong and my friends and my family all rallied around to help me get through it. But at the very start, they were like trying to fix it and trying to make sense of it and trying to understand like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like you guys, you had this happy marriage and you had that. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess we didn't. So anyway, but I think, to your point, it's just you have to look at what those types of changes bring into your life that are good,
Right. And then also make sure that it doesn't, because even if we grow from it, we have to also check in a positive way. We still need to check, is there any kind of residue, trauma left?
Sure.
Is my heart closed now because I'm afraid to get hurt again? Have I written off love? Or am I overbearing parent? Because I'm not saying you are, but because my mother wasn't here. Like what? Because sometimes we're not even aware of those things, and that's why that honesty piece is so important because there's so much to uncover. It's not just getting past that one big hurdle. After I really started to see Josh as a gift, and then I had my third child, I started to piece together why it affected me so much in a different kind of way. And I didn't have that piece at first. And I've written about it in one of my books called Fear is Not an Option. My first fear ever was when I my uncle became schizophrenic, and it happened in my eyes as a 7-year-old, like overnight. And so I thought it was contagious for most of my life. I was like, oh my God, if I was in the street and I walked past a house person who was talking to himself or screaming, I would hold my breath, even if I was on a run or, like my whole life. And I think even if my family did speak to me about it, predisposed genetic, disposition, I would be like, I wouldn't have helped me anyway. But my point is, I had this fear. And I realized with Josh, like, of all the things, why did it have to be his mind, right? Why did it have to be his intellect? Like, couldn't it be something else? Because and again, Down syndrome has nothing to do with schizophrenia, but because I was so afraid of that, right? And it was like the same part of the body was affected in some kind of way. And it turned out not to be any kind of correlation. It didn't even remind me of my uncle, but that was a big fear. And I didn't have that piece, right? And then later I realized, that I was still worried about what it looked like from the outside. Would people judge me? She deserves this or what? If there are so many different things to discover about how I felt about myself, even though at that point I had a pretty good relationship with myself. I had overcome anorexia. I had done a lot of that work already, but then there were more layers and more layers to strip away. And now I always say, all my kids are my teacher, but he's softened me the most, I would say, for sure, and made me the most empathetic. And he's just so unconditionally kind, and to see that every day. Like, he'd literally give you the food off his plate. If he was starving, he would give it to you first. Like, things that come naturally to him that, we have to work really hard to even get to like a little bit of that. I'm sure any of us would actually do that.
Yeah.
But those are just some examples. So I think that for your listeners, it's really important. It's a really beautiful journey when you live life this way. It's like you have your relationship with yourself just grows immensely, and you can really feel good about yourself, and that you can trust yourself to make good choices for yourself because you have this emotional intelligence, because you're constantly in that feedback loop.
Yeah.
So in the absence of a traumatic event, which most of us change after, like, what are some easy, like first
Great
steps
question.
that someone would take to kind of open themselves up?
change.
Something isn't forcing you to change, but I want to change.
Great
Like, what are
question.
first things to
Right,
do?
because everybody's like, I don't want this. We're talking about all these heavy things.
Yeah.
So first you have to be clear about how you feel about change and why. So that first part still is applicable. And then from there, if you decide that you want to I would say like do a 30-day or 40-day challenge, a change challenge. There's little ways every day because it's a muscle that you flex. So the more that you use it, the stronger you're going to get in it. So when I started to really do this, I remember one early story. We were going to a friend's birthday party in Mexico. She had like a destination birthday. It was her 40th birthday, and everybody was on the same flight. We got to the airport just a little bit late, and the person in front of us in line got on the flight, and then they looked at us and they're like, sorry, that's it. It's closed. So my husband and I looked at each other, and I'm like, all right, and we hadn't, for like whatever reason that month, we hadn't spent a lot of time together. We had just moved to New York. It was like a really crazy time in our lives. And I'm like, you know what? Airports are great these days. Like, let's make it a date. Let's go get a drink. Let's walk around. I'll get, a shoulder massage. Like, this will be great. We'll catch the next flight. We got on the next flight 2 hours later. So we missed like the welcome thing or whatever. But I told my friend, she was a little bit disappointed, but we got on the flight. We met them there. When we got there, everybody was like, was your flight full of turbulence? And we're like, no. We're like, oh my God, we were bouncing up and down. People were throwing up everywhere. We were so scared. People were screaming they didn't want to die. And I was like, we didn't have even one bump. Now, even if the story didn't have that outcome, my point is we just don't know. We don't know anything at any given time, at any given moment of any day. So it's silly to pretend like you do or to go around life like I have decided that it has to be this way or it's bad, right? Instead, just say, okay, this thing that I wanted to happen today is no longer an option. What is an option, right? Just to be like flexible in that way. So I've gotten to the point now where if I'm about to have a meeting, let's say right now I'm speaking to you and I see my phone light up and it's what's going to be next in the day, in my mind, I'm already like, because this happens sometimes, thinking, okay, if they cancel, what am I going to do instead? Like, I'm not, it's non-attachment is really what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Non-attachment. So not to any outcome, remember that the process is the purpose. So that whole exercise and that day that we missed the flight or the first flight was an exercise in just going with the flow, not being reactive, not getting angry, right? I could have yelled at somebody. There's so many other things I could have done, but instead just to go into that. So I think for the listeners, just every day, what's one, like, even if it's not throughout the day, when something happens in the day that you didn't want, what are your options?
Yeah. I love that story because I love the whole like theory of sliding doors and like, you know,
That's
if you
your
take
favorite
this,
thing.
that's my favorite thing. If you take this path, you know, what would happen? Or, you know, so I think that, and you know, there's also, not to bring 9/11 into it again, but there's so many stories of people who were supposed to be at work that weren't, or they were taking their kid to school and they missed, you know, whatever it was. And I always believed, and I have always believed this, that those things are divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. There's a reason why you missed that flight.
Yeah.
There's a reason, you know, and nothing obviously catastrophic happened in your situation to your friends, but you know, not only did you make the best of it, you also missed a shitty flight.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and we are big believers of everything happens for a reason. There's no coincidences. Like I
or
believe
you
that
make
too.
the thing you make, you know. I mean, look, no one wants horrible things to happen to anybody, and you know, you can't say like, well, what's the reason why that happened? But you can say, what can I take from it? What can I learn from it? How can I make? What's the silver lining? Whatever, however you want to say it. I just think that I love that. I love that whole idea of thinking about like, well, you know, you're not in control. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody, you know, you can't predict the future, and you have to kind of roll with it.
So here's the offering, right? Because I think most people get to where what you guys are suggesting, right? They get to the place where like, oh, you know, it's meant to be, or they surrender at some point. I'm saying just get in front of it. Like you can make this so much easier. You're going to probably get there, most likely, most of us. Some people want to stay grumpy and stay in it, but we'll get to that place of like, yeah, I can see the silver lining. I can see the gift in it. I'm just saying, train your brain. Something happens and it's not what you wanted. Okay, what is an option? That's why my book, if fear is no longer an option, already you're saying, what is an option? And when you tell your brain something and you ask it questions like, what should I do now? It starts to give you information, right? And it's just so much easier. It's so much easier than the other way.
You talk a lot about, you know, change being a lifestyle, which sounds like this is what, you know, you totally live this. It's not a destination, but how do you differentiate between making changes and truly living a life that embraces this constant change?
Great question. So you said earlier you like change, but you like to make change, right? I think often, and maybe I misunderstood what you were saying about you, but I think often people are like, I'm craving change. I think I'll get a haircut, or I'm craving change. I think I'm gonna, you know, maybe I want to move, or like I want to, you know, like I'm gonna get. We create. It's almost like a Band-Aid, or because we are innately all seekers, right? There are 7 primary emotions that all of us have. It's rage, lust, fear, care, regret and pain, and play. The one that is the most, I think I said all 7, is the primary one that comes out throughout our lives is seeking. So we're going to seek things anyway. If we're not clear about why we want what we want, we're going to chase the wrong things. So if you want a change and you're like, okay, I think I'll cut my hair, what are you really craving? You know, what is it that you want to change? Is it the routine of your life? Is it that you're in a job that's not really what you want to do anymore? Is it that you know you're not living your soul's purpose? Like, what is the real desire behind what you've decided is going to be the solution, right? The want behind the words, you know, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. We've already decided, because we're not really stopping for a second and saying, what is it really that I'm craving? What in my life is not lining up for me and I'm not satisfied? So if we take that time, then it's going to be, instead of just a superficial or a light change, it's going to be a deep change that's absolutely going to make you ultimately happier.
And so what are you seeking when you rearrange your furniture 1,200 times?
Exactly.
You're not
Who's
talking
doing it?
about
Which
me,
one
are
of
you?
you?
I do it. I do it constantly. Yeah, that really resonated because I often think, I coach clients through nutrition and fitness, and I know you mentioned that you struggled with an eating disorder, and I think that a lot of times clients are they want to change their body, they want to change something about their health, and they do all these things kind of around it, but they don't know why. Like, so my questions are always to my clients, why? Why do you want to lose 10 pounds? Oh, because I want to fit into why? Why does that mean anything to you? And we just keep going and going, deeper into those different layers. But I really never thought about it in regards to myself. Why do I do that? I mean, I think that speaks also to like addictions and habits and things people do because they're,
Yes.
they're self-soothing or they're covering something else up. Or, I had a very big shopping addiction for a very long time. And, it's only in digging
That was after the divorce, probably.
That was after the divorce. Well,
I don't know that we could blame the divorce for the shopping addiction.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think that, in looking at that, I've kind of realized like where that came from. And, it's like you're trying to fill a void or there's something that's missing. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
I constantly ask myself why I do the things I do. And by the way, like the exercise piece, I mean, I'm very aware of what that does for me still today, right? It's very much rooted. It was always my tool to calm myself and soothe myself. But as I get older, like I can't just add an additional hour of the workout to soothe, right? I have to find that, so you can be honest with yourself. Eventually, even though I wasn't prepared to change anything about that, and I'm hardly still, but I'm definitely kinder to my body, right? I definitely respect it so much more. I understand its limitations. I took a ruptured tendon 2 years ago to really understand it more. But even when that happened, right, I was like, okay, Monica, you understand this ruptured tendon. It was about a lot of things. I was afraid to move forward. I had a new role, a lot more responsibility that I didn't want to take on. And so it's like my foot was like, where are we going? Right? Like I understood that spiritually speaking, but I also understood that you can't just rely on taxing your body to be able for you to calm yourself, right? And you need to find out that, and it's been a lifelong journey. So my point is that example, but there's so many others throughout the day. Like, why is it that you're doing this? Even if it's a good thing, working out's a good thing, but what's your why, right? Why? And the other way, right? Before is what is your why so you can endure anyhow, but also what is your why so you actually don't need to do all the things you're doing, right? It can work both ways. And it's really important to have those conversations.
Yes, it's very enlightening.
It's very enlightening. As the one who doesn't change, the one who is constantly in motion is getting the real lesson here.
I know. It's one of those things. Like sometimes I don't practice what I preach, but.
Well, I often say we teach what we need to learn. So you're
true.
on it.
True.
Be good to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. Yeah.
No.
Well, I think that's also, and I think for a lot of people, your go-to
Totally.
is to automatically beat yourself up over the things that you're doing, you're not doing, you're changing, you're not changing. I think that letting go of that, and like to your point earlier about like as you get older, you just don't give a shit anymore.
You
Like
really don't care.
You care
really don't
less
care.
about.
Yes. It's like not actually. I want to amend that. It's not like I don't care, but it is what you said. You care less about.
Well,
things.
you care less about the things that don't really matter.
Right. You just really, you just really look at the. I'm just coming off a work trip, and the things I deal with it much differently that kind of trip than I did 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I would much more uptight, much more nervous, much more a lot of things. I still get those things. I get those feelings, but I've learned how to kind of stabilize it if that makes any sense. I'm not sure that it does,
Yeah,
but I feel
1,000%.
calmer about it.
I think I don't beat myself. Part of with anorexia, what I really eliminated from my lexicon, and I just do not entertain those emotions anymore, is blame, shame, and guilt. Never feel them anymore.
So hard.
It took a long time to work through that, but they're gone. So I don't beat myself up, but I think that rush to be, because we're going to run out of time, that was definitely something. But I identified what that was too, because my father passed away 3 years ago, and he had cognitive decline for 7 years prior to that. And I saw his life running out of time, right? And that was like, oh my God, I got to put mine on high gear. And I was like, okay, Monica, that's not the lesson here. So that was a whole nother thing. But this new thing, and that's part of being kind to yourself, it's just something I started practicing the last few months. It's like, okay, if I have a goal that I need to do so much in this day, right? I've decided that that's really what I want to achieve today. I can actually stretch the day out, right? Like we have 24 hours a day. Why do I have to decide I need to do all these things between 9 and 5 or 9 and 8 or whatever? I can actually go to sleep and wake up, and there's still the window of that day, right? So I constantly change the way I think about things, because that's where the freedom comes in, right? It just constantly challenge my thoughts. Like, is this working for you? And because we take on new thoughts, some positive, some negative, that we don't even realize very often, right?
Yeah.
Even as we get older. So, I get so excited about that.
I think like as you get older, you're changing every day. You change every minute, and so you don't not. I definitely don't acknowledge that, but I know that I'm a much different person now than I was a few years ago, or even
You're
a couple
welcome.
weeks ago.
You're welcome. But no, I love what you just said though about
Yeah, I
like
do too.
that to do. Like I feel like I have a constant to do list in my head, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to get those things done in this window of time. And it's like I do feel like I don't know. It sounds like I'm in a hurry but I don't know what I'm in a hurry to do.
Right.
You know, and it's like like I feel stuck, even though I'm always moving. Does that make any sense?
1,000%. I love you guys. You're so honest and open. I love this, because this was a game changer for me. I remember my husband would see my to-do list, and then I'd rewrite them to make them neat again and whatever. And he's like, what are you doing?
Oh my God,
This is
her.
years ago. And he's like, what are you doing with all these lists? He's like, none of this matters. Like nothing on this list really matters. And I thought about it. I was like, I don't have to get this thing done on this day just because I decided that would be the right time or the right day to do it. And certainly when I moved to New York, that threw out, like, forget it. You cannot do any errands except in a small window, and you can't go to East Side or West Side or Uptown or Downtown. Like you just won't, you'll waste your whole day. So actually you have much more efficiency here because you don't have a lot of options in that regard. But I started to write a to-be list and then a to-do list. And this was a game changer for me. So the to-be list was who I want to be, right? And that will change as you change. And then your to-do list supports the to-be list. So for instance, on my to-be list was to make sure that each day, let's give an example, I do an act of sharing. It's really important. That's the kind of person I want to become. So on my to-do list would be, make sure to call a friend in need or go volunteer once a week. So that week I will absolutely do that thing, right? And then ultimately you're doing things that are really purpose-filled instead of doing things that don't really have to happen, like rearranging the furniture 15 times or, going to the grocery store, an extra time, because it just changes the way you live. So your to-be list will support your to-do list. I mean, the other thing is this, right? Let's say on your to-do list was to lose weight or to be more fit. Who do you have to be to achieve those things, right? You have to be somebody who's consistent, who's accountable, who is hardworking, right? So your to-be list will actually inform everything it is that you want to do, and vice versa. But the being is always the most important part.
And I think that would also help you to kind of prioritize things in your life too, right? I mean, I think
you don't waste any more time. Absolutely.
I definitely waste a lot of time.
So now I have like just a be list, and then the doing list is like, they only come around for like the holidays, like Thanksgiving. I'm making like a baking list with ingredients. I never do that. So now when I do that, I'm like, oh, this is a fun old kind of list. Like I never do these lists anymore. Or like for holidays, I'm like, okay, I've got to get these presents. But like other than that, it's more like, actually, to tell you the truth, this is like, because again, with this way of thinking, so I wear a lot of different hats, and so I've now made days very specific. So like Monday is operational. Tuesday is study and preparing for my podcast. Wednesday is just recording or filming. And And then Thursday's meeting with students, and then Friday's not scheduled. So I have the freedom, because everybody needs to feel like they have the freedom to choose. And so it's organized, but it's free. And there's nothing really written in that. So the day, it doesn't have a lot of structure in that way, but I'm very clear about what I'm doing in each day, because I know who I want to be at the end of the week. And I know what I need to do in that week to become that. Right.
Wow.
This is so
I
eye-opening.
know. I love that.
I'm doing this. I'm starting.
Well, it's funny
tomorrow.
what you were saying about how you want to be, and what just popped into my brain was that I brought this up a lot. My father passed away quite recently, like within the last 6 months, and so, or actually, it's probably more than that now. But ever since that, there is something in me that I want to be kinder to the people around me. And I just said I was on a work trip, and there are people that I only work with when the show goes on location, and I don't see them that often. And I made a conscious effort with a few of them to say, like, what else do you do besides us? Like, like I was asking them more questions. I've known these people for a long time, and I realized to myself, like, I've never really asked them about them. And I did that a few times on this trip, and I just felt better. And I felt more grateful for what they were doing to help my job a little easier on remote. It was just kind of like I don't know that I thought about doing that, but I just did it. And then there was just something in me that I wanted to do that more.
And that's who you become more of, right? Now, because that felt good. So you're like, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
It felt good. I feel closer to these people, and I'm already here investing in this company, whatever. So why not, right? And I think that that's beautiful. So on your to-be list would be curious or offer kindness to people you normally wouldn't. And if that's in the forefront of your mind, now what you do in that week is absolutely going to be different. Even if it's the same things, the way you experience it, the people that you come across, your job will be different, because your being is now a focus.
When it's something like this, attempting change, like what's like 1, 2, or 3 things that if someone listening to this right now is saying, okay, I want to put these things, what are some actionable things that someone can do to kind of start changing?
So I think we just sum up. I think we covered 3 really great kind of avenues and points. So the first, know what you believe. Make sure your thoughts are supporting you. If they're not, you can change them, right? Just be really clear. So I would even journal about that. My belief systems, these are the ones that are working for me. These are not. And then what do I want to do about the ones that don't work? And you start actively doing that. I mean, the thing about change is we make it so big, like, oh, it's going to take so much time and effort. I'm going to wait to do it. I'm talking about small change after small change creates great change. Every day, just choose one thing in the direction you want to go in. And great. If you achieve it that day, great. If not, tomorrow's a new day, right? So super simple approach around it. The second, try to practice flexibility in your day, especially when something doesn't go as you intend. So you get disappointed, totally normal human reaction, feel your disappointment, fine. And then say, okay, I don't want to ruin this whole day. What are my options? So if this is no longer an option, what is? And the third is create your to-be list. Do it on a Sunday night, on a Friday or Saturday or Sunday, review it again and start over again. In your being, you start doing the things that really are important to you. And then before you know it, you actually are changing in the direction that serves you the best.
Amazing.
That's great.
Amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, right?
It doesn't.
I think everyone thinks of it as
change is very paralyzing, and you want to change.
It can be. Right. And I think acknowledging, like you said, like those little things, acknowledging like those small wins or those small changes that you make over time that do add up to the bigger the bigger thing.
Yeah.
No, that's great advice.
Also, one last thing.
Sure.
We accept certain things as facts, like because it's always been this way, it's always going to be this way. Because my parents were this way, I'm going to be this way. Because I never saw anything change, nothing's ever going to change, right? These absolutes, like stop living in absolutes. My youngest daughter developed a fear of flying, a fear of elevators, and I had a fear of elevators. And I was like, well, there's epigenetics. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I was scared when I was still pregnant with her. And I'm like, no, Monica, you know what? Because I overcame it. When I moved to New York, I'm like, I'm not taking this fear with me. I decided I'm not afraid of elevators anymore. Like you can create crazy change if you decide. So when this new one of flying, and we travel a lot for work, I was like, sweetie, dear Abigail, you were born into the wrong family to have all these fears. Just not going to have it. Like, I understand that's how you're feeling. We're going to overcome it, because it's either you will choose to stay home when we travel, or we're going to travel together as a family. So what's your choice, and let's work through it. I feel you. I understand, but let's talk about this, and I support you. And then we're not going to give it that much energy. So you can start early. It's these conversations, have with yourself, but also have with your children, have with people. Don't accept absolutes, because it's always been this way. It has to always be this way.
That's great advice. I love this. I love this conversation. Thank you so much for being
so much.
here.
Let's promote you've promoted Fear is Not an Option. I know you have a children's book that's out, The Gift of Being Different.
Mm-hmm. And The Tale of the Other Glove just came out. Okay. 2 children's books and another book called Rethink Love, since we're just talking about it.
No, that's okay.
No, if there's anything else
you
want to share.
Yeah, and we have a podcast called Spiritually Hungry.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, great. And we'll put everything in our show notes
everything will
so
be in
that
our
people
show
can
notes.
find you.
Monica Berg, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. So to-be list for Jen Giamo.
Yeah.
That is what I like it. I like it.
I like it too. That was a great conversation.
It was very thoughtful. It made me think of different things,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The whole idea of this pursuit of change.
Yeah.
But not really knowing why you want it.
Right.
Is something that you have to really take a step back and think about, right? It's which we talked a lot, obviously, about changes that happen, in your life that are unavoidable and things like that. And that's different. But this pursuit of change, I think has a deeper,
we think of
understanding.
Change, and a lot of change that people think about, I think, is in real superficial terms. It's how you look. It's cutting your hair. It's changing your furniture. It's all those things. But the real change from within, that, you don't really think of that. Why don't I want it? Why don't I like change? That's really the question.
That's the question.
That's the question. And then maybe the change will come. Why do I hold on to all this stuff? I mean, I kind of look at you already were irritated when I brought that up. You already
at all
you totally your whole body was
I am
cringed up, curled up into a ball.
And I roll with the punches here. That's what I do.
That's what you do.
Yeah, nothing really affects me. I'm just,
You just are easy breezy.
Yep.
Easy breezy Jen Giamo.
That's me. That's the new me.
Is that?
That's the new to be.
To be.
Yeah. I want to be easy breezy.
Okay.
You don't think I can, do you?
Anyway, what? Do I think that you could do that?
Yeah.
I have doubts, but if you say you will, I'll believe you.
You're supposed to have faith.
I have faith. I have complete faith in you.
Well, it doesn't sound like you do.
I do.
It's okay.
You don't have faith in me that I will change.
I don't
It's
really.
Right. That's what I'm saying. What? It's our base of our friendship is that we have no faith in each other. What's that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a whole other topic, I think.
I think that's true.
For another
true.
day.
Yes, but this one I think was really thought-provoking, made you think about your daily ways in the world, how you go through your day.
Mm-hmm.
And how you can change
and
how you go
why.
through your ways. And the why. Yeah, always. So we hope you like that too, and you'll go out and change something today. I'm Lori Schulweis.
And I'm Jen Giamo.
And this was Everybody Talks.
Talk to you next time. For more information about our podcast, to learn more about us, and to catch up on all of our episodes, go to our website at everybodytalkspodcast.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Shuli, at Jen Giamo, and at Everybody Talks. And if you want to watch today's episode, go to our YouTube channel at Everybody Talks Podcast.
Join the Everybody Talks community by checking out our Patreon page, where you can become an exclusive member of our wellness group and be a part of the conversation.
And don't forget, if you like what you've heard, give us a 5-star rating, write a review, and tell a friend. We're for everybody and everybody. The Everybody Talks podcast is co-created, executive produced, and hosted by us, Lori Schulweis and Jen Giamo. Produced and edited by Station 16.
Our theme song music is written and performed by Jackie Ryle and Aaron Navisi, with additional support from our pups, Oliver, Milo, and Murray.
Talk to you next time.